You know what I like? Monitors. And this case has one built right into the front panel. This is the DeepCool CH510 Mesh Digital, a mid-tower case that not only scores major points by allowing your PC to cool down like a freaking champ, but at the same time, if you fucked up your system, it will constantly remind you by how much. But before we get any deeper on that whole monitor thing, let's go over some of this case's specs. At 455 by 230 by 472 millimeters, the case can still be regarded as a quite compact one, but that's like really only on the outside. Inside we are looking at quite the thing. By default we can fit regular mini ITX and up to ATX motherboards, but if you're willing to sacrifice a few things like the cable pass-through holes to the back or the GPU anti-sag bracket, we can go with up to eATX sized ones. On the GPU side, the theoretical maximum is 400 millimeters, but that's like without taking front fans into account or anything else, and whatever you mount in the front will be subtracted from that 400 millimeters, like radiators, fans, radiator fans. Everything is going down from that 400. But even without whatever you want to put in the front, that thing is made for up to 4090s, especially the case's depth, because with up to 195mm deep cards, you have even the space for that dreaded NVIDIA Octopus. On the CPU cooler side, it actually looks just as good. Up to 175mm high cooler, so even Nokia NHD 15s with quite the elevated front fan in the case that you have like very big RGB RAM. Stuff like that is a possibility in here. Let's get to the I/O. In the top of the case we got a fairly updated panel, USB 3.0 Type A, audio in and out, and a USB Type C that looks like it's a 3.1 Gen 2. And of course a fairly clicky start button. Behind the case we got some more space, 2mm to be exact, and even if there are no rails or any other type of fancy stuff, that's more than enough given that there are some slots for zip ties, and especially because the cable cutouts look nice and everything is okay given the price point. There could be a rail, but it's okay. As for the PSU, DeepCool says up to 175mm long, which I do agree. But if you want to squeeze everything out of this, you can just relocate that hard drive bracket in front of it, giving you slightly more space, or just completely remove it for maximum cable length, cable access, and for the certainty that you are not saving your 200 gig school folder onto caveman technology. But in case that you are really into fidget spinners, you can install one hard drive inside and another one on top of that bracket. Just do yourself the favor and move the bracket more to the front. There is not really a point in leaving it like next to the PSU. In case you need quicker access to your dirty stuff, you can also use the top part of the cage to install an SSD, as well as the two spots right behind the motherboard plate. As far as general specs are concerned, that's really all about it. So let's get into the main focus, or the main focus point about this case. Cooling. The front of the case is made completely out of mesh. Given it has mesh in the name, that wasn't that much surprising after all. But DeepCool did some very detailed work on the little aspects all around the case. Behind the front panel we got another magnetically attached dust filter. At the first thought you might think that this would end up like a double filtering thing, but actually in between these like rounded off corners and the actual edge of the front panel there is quite the gap letting air through, which is unfiltered at that point, so you kinda need that filter to filter the unfiltered, even if you are double filtering whatever comes with the front panel. I know it sounds complicated, but it's okay that there is a filter in there. It's not like necessary, or given how big the holes and how far away the fans are from that front panel, I doubt that closing off these holes would change anything at all, but DeepCool wanted to be sure, and that's a good way to go. And at that point, can we just appreciate that DeepCool did not cut round holes into neither the front panel nor the dust filters? Everything about this DeepCool case is made from squares. The holes around the back fan, square. The holes around the GPU, square. The holes in the front, square. The holes in the top dust filter, square. And even the holes underneath are square. Everything is really square. Even DeepCool's logo is just a pixel art. But let's stay on the cooling part. In theory, you can install either 3 120s or 2 140 fans in the front. Even if both variations will work just fine, a quite big chunk of the most top 120mm fan would be blocked off by that monitor inside of the front panel. Now, it's not a devastating blow to the case. There is enough space in front of it to allow air to reach and like the complete fan and then be pulled to the back. Everything would work fine, but it is still a 90-degree turn that the air needs to make. So in my opinion, just get 2 140s and push them further down. It will be less expensive for you and you don't need to wonder if the top 120 is being throttled at all. For the top, we got some really good treat. There is, again, 3 120s or 2 140s, but instead of just cutting rails where there are no holes, the complete thing is made out of these square cutouts, so your 140s will be fully utilized. And this even allows fans like the Silverstone 160s, which are actually just like 140 mountings with a bigger fan, to reach their full potential, so a really good job right there. For the back, it's not that pretty. It's either 120 or 140, but the 140 doesn't seem to be particularly useful as there are just like 4 little holes drilled through without giving the fan itself like a lot more real estate to work with. So yeah, just use a 120. 140 just seems like a bit of a waste there. On the bright side, this is also the single place where we will find the free included 120mm fan, a definitively airflow focused 1200 RPM quick 3-pin voltage controlled fan. Very far from the best fan available, but it's okay quiet and it does the job for free. But still, get at least 2 more fans in the front, at least 2, please. Noise-wise, the back fan isn't noticeable immediately. This is basically the system idling. There is a 13700K in there. This should be like 30% fan speed, maybe 40. I can hear it, but it's not annoying, but it is definitely louder than any of the Be Quiet fans in here. We have 2 140mm sounding 4s at 1100 RPM max, and in the top we have the, what are those, like the Pure Wing 3s in 140. All of the fans are running on the same connection right now, so I'm guessing like 30-40%. Noticeable but not annoying. But we are not quite done with fan support. On the top side of the PSU shroud, we got another bunch of square cutouts. And around these square cutouts, we got holes for another 2 120mm fans blasting air into the GPU. Now these fans are not completely useless. The most bottom front fan position does push some air underneath the PSU shroud, which can be picked up by that fan on top of it and then pushed into the GPU. But let's be honest, this is more like a redirectional thing. As long as there are not like an army of holes here, it won't change anything. Sure, you have some more cutouts on the back panel with another dust filter, which is kind of cool, especially if you have a dog or something or a cat. They are not completely useless, but they won't change a lot. The advantages will be quite limited. For radiators, it's just a carbon copy of the fans, up to 360 or 280mm in the front and up to 360 or 280mm in the top. And as long as you're coming with fairly thin ones without like enormous overhangs on each side, you'd maybe even get away with 2 of them at the same time. With all of the usual stuff, let's get to the unusual stuff, starting with the most usual stuff that there is, the GPU Anti-sag Bracket, which is really great. It's adjustable, it can be pushed up and down by loosening the 2 screws in the back, and it can even be moved to the front of the case if you want to compensate for something with a giant GPU. Easy to use, simple, great, I love it. And now that monitor, that thing is freaking awesome. It is very simple, does exactly one thing and nothing more. To connect it, you need to hook up that leftover USB 2.0 header coming from the front panel. And then install the software that DeepCool offers on their product page. You know why I love how this works? Because it does exactly one thing. It shows a single number and nothing more. The software is as simple as it gets. It's a freaking taskbar icon with a right-click menu allowing you to choose between CPU package temperature and GPU temperature. The most customization that this thing will let you do is choose between Fahrenheit and Celsius. That's it. That thing starts with Windows by default and it doesn't give a fuck. That's it. I love that. I swear if I have to look at another 30 minutes of Asus or MSI boot screen animations to set up a freaking fan curve, I will hurt somebody. Or myself, because all of that bloatware gives me cancer anyway. This is simple, one job, nothing else. Why is it that hard for hardware manufacturers to understand that nobody wants their animations? You are creating rudimentary software to control fan speeds or whatever you want to control. It will only be used by people who know how to use it. Stop pretending that you are motion array. With that one big feature out of the way, let's get to the good and bad about the DeepCool CH510 Mesh Digital. On one side, it's definitely got some major compatibility points. You can fit a ton in here. Granted, it's not quite the triple 140mm capable case, but given its compact form factor, that's still kind of okay. Dual 140 in the front, dual 140 in the top, or triple 120 everywhere, which is fine. The build quality, that's a yes and a The motherboard plate and the PSU shroud do have a slight flex, yes, but other than that, the case is really great. The detail work is amazing, the tempered glass side panel is 3.8mm thick, held on by some magnets in the top with like a slight mechanic where you just pull it off instead of those 10th century hooks and yeah, I don't like that. I really prefer the magnet way that DeepCool went here. And the whole thing is removable by just pulling, which is really great. And just in case, you can add another additional screw to that thing to make it, or to make the glass more secure. But not everything about the build quality can be great. Let's take the front panel for example. Ignoring what the front panel does, the display portion is still attached to it. So once you remove it, you'll be left with that cable dangling in your way, which isn't quite up to the 2023 standard. And then we got something that DeepCool definitely had a great idea with, but the implementation just isn't really, it doesn't really work. Around the front panel, we got these two stripes of styrofoam. I suppose these are meant to either make the front panel install and removable mechanic more like a pop instead of a clock, or they are meant to seal off the front panel. Well, it doesn't really matter because it doesn't touch anything. They are just dangling mid-air, rendering them completely useless. And now let's get to the monitor. I love the idea. I personally really like having my temps always in sight. And I even like DeepCool's software. I really do, because it does a single thing and it never needs to do anything, or I never need to do anything with it for it to work at all times. But that thing is so freaking oversized. Why is there so much nothing for so little monitor? Like on the B-rolls, you should be able to see what the actual monitor is, and everything else black around it is just useless plastic. Why? Just make that thing so much smaller, keep the same monitor, and give the case a lot more like fan real estate without blocking it off. Why would you do that? Plus, a suggestion from my side, maybe add a temperature probe somewhere in the case, just so that the monitor can start by default with that probe, giving you like an in-case air temperature that doesn't require the software to be installed in the first place. And if you would do that, you would even include people who are using like weird animal themed operating systems, which would be quite the good thing. Another aspect that I really didn't saw coming is the angle at which you can read the monitor. From looking straight on it, it's perfectly fine. If you move to the right side, it works perfectly fine too. But for some reason, if you move to the left of the case, whatever you're reading starts looking like really weird. I don't know what's happening there. The monitor does look like one of those old school like fuel pump or gas station monitors. So maybe there is like a technology issue. I'm not really that sure, but it looks really weird. Then for the cable management inside of the case, I love the cutouts. They are really great, and I am even shocked how much cables I could stuff in the back. The cable management for this build was just stuffing, and it worked perfectly fine. However, I believe the GPU cable in the bottom is basically mandatory nowadays, especially because of that NVIDIA Octopus. It really is. And routing the front fans was particularly hard because there is no hole big enough for the cable to go to the back without it being visible. And there is some random spot somewhere on the mainboard plate that's really glued to the front, but it's too small for a PWM header or connector, so it just won't go through, and I needed to route the cable to the top of the case or to the bottom. Just add a random spot big enough. That way nobody will see the cable and it will be heck of a lot easier. And now let's get to the cooling part. For that I would like to invite you to the build video about this build here, and that's going to be released in a week from now, and there we will talk more about the cooling process and how everything worked and in detail, and that's fine. But to give you a heads up, it cools down great. Or in other words, the case doesn't create enough restrictions for the cooling inside to be noticeably worse than just having it outside. So it's great. And to give you some numbers, the PC we built right here is an Intel 13700K on top of a ASRock Z790 motherboard. Those are actually just 2 sticks of RAM, not 4. The other 2 are dummies. That's a different story. And we got the new Be Quiet Pure Loop 2 in 280 on top. And at the bottom we got the Gainwatt Phantom RTX 4080. For the front ventilation we got 2 of Be Quiet Soundwing 4 in 140mm, spinning at up to 1100 RPM. And we got the back exhaust fan, which is the original DeepCool one. Without doing anything to the settings, letting Cinebench run in a loop and Furmark at 1080p, all settings high, we were looking at 92, I believe it was, somewhere around that, on the CPU while pulling more than, or while drawing more than 220 watts, so it's really fine. And the GPU was sitting at like 58, but given that it was just 1080p, it really doesn't matter that much. But the cooling, great. I'm really happy how the whole thing turned out. We're not going to do like standardized benchmarkings for cases, that's a whole different level of benchmarking, but as a whole, as a build, turned out perfectly fine. On the price side, this thing is going for 70 euros right here, right now, and that is one hell of a price for that type and that level of case. Given the few downsides that I was able to find, or the few things that I didn't like, it's really still up there. You have high quality dust filters, very good meshy front, we have a very good meshy top, the compatibility in here is great, we have a temperature monitor, we got excellent cooling, and given the price tag, the overall build quality is more than fine. So from our side, given the price tag, it's definitely a recommendation. Cooling is fine, the monitor works, and it kinda looks great from the right angle, but the overall design is very simple, black, modest, completely my thing, and for whatever build you're planning, this should definitely be a consideration. But before I forget it, Craptastic product description. One RG poop, not because DeepCool used exaggerated or false claims on their website, but because they said you can add a screw to the glass panel to add safety. It's security. Safety would be if a PC is attacking an idiot, but usually it's an idiot attacking the poor PC, so it's security. But okay, for today this is going to be it for DeepCool and their CH510 Mesh Digital. At this point, a huge thank you to them for sending it over. And on a side note, we also have a Discord server, so if you want to join, the link is down below. And of course, we still have channel membership, so if you're looking for a good way to sell your soul for an RG poop emoji, that's a pretty good way to go. Additionally, you can rest assured that the income will not only keep the channel afloat, it will also serve to write a guide about safety versus security, because it's goddamn time for PCs to get some security too. They do deserve to feel safe. Anyway, thank you for watching, and if you want to continue, have a look at our take on the Be Quiet Darkrogue Elite, because Ultra Pro was already under copyright. Hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.